The space station called Harmony 7 floated in the darkness of space near a dying red star. It was a massive place, bigger than most cities on Earth. Thousands of aliens from dozens of different worlds lived and worked there. They came to trade goods, to make deals, and to find new opportunities. The corridors were always busy. The markets were always loud. Money changed hands every second of every day. But in the dark corners of this busy place, where the lights flickered and the cleaning robots rarely came, there were those who had nothing. The forgotten ones. The invisible ones. Kira was one of them. She was a Valari girl, only 9 years old by Earth counting. Her people had pale blue skin that was supposed to glow softly in the dark. Her eyes were supposed to shine like 2 small moons. But Kira did not glow anymore. Her skin had turned gray and dull. Her eyes had lost their light. She was too hungry, too weak, too tired. She sat in a small space between 2 large garbage containers in an alley behind the food court. The smell was terrible. Old food rotted nearby. Insects from 3 different planets crawled around her. But Kira did not move. She could not move. She had not eaten real food in 17 days. 3 months ago, Kira had a family. She had a mother who sang beautiful songs. She had a father who told funny stories. They were refugees, running away from a terrible war that had destroyed their home planet. They had saved enough money to buy tickets on a small transport ship heading to Harmony 7. They were going to start a new life. But the universe is not always kind. Raiders attacked the ship 2 days before it reached the station. They came in fast, small fighters. They shot holes in the transport ship and boarded it. Kira remembered the screaming. She remembered her mother pushing her into a cargo container and telling her to stay quiet. She remembered her father standing at the door with a metal pipe, ready to fight. She never saw them again. When the raiders left, Kira climbed out of the container. The ship was broken. Most of the passengers were dead. The few survivors managed to send a distress signal, and a rescue ship came. But when they arrived at Harmony 7, Kira was alone. She had no parents. She had no money. She had no documents. The station authorities did not know what to do with her. The Valari embassy was understaffed and overwhelmed with refugees. They'd put her name on a waiting list and told her to come back in 6 months. 6 months? As if a 9-year-old girl with nothing could survive 6 months on her own. At first, Kira tried to beg. She sat near the main marketplace and held out her hands. She looked at people with her big, sad eyes and asked for help. The Tehran merchants walked past her without stopping. They were tall beings with red skin and 4 arms. They were known for their love of money and their hatred of weakness. One of them spat at her feet and called her a dirty refugee. Another one laughed and said her people deserved what happened to them. The Nexari traders did not even look at her. They were insect-like creatures with large compound eyes that could see in all directions. But somehow, they never saw Kira. She was invisible to them. Just another piece of garbage in the station. Even other Valari refugees avoided her. They had their own problems, their own families to feed, their own survival to worry about. Some of them felt guilty when they saw her, so they looked away. It was easier that way. Days passed. Then weeks. Kira learned to find food in the garbage. She learned which restaurants threw away the most leftovers. She learned which times were safest to search through the waste containers. She learned to be quick and quiet and invisible. But the garbage was not enough. The food was often rotten. It made her sick. She grew weaker and weaker. Her body was shutting down. Now, on this day, Kira sat in her dark corner and felt death coming for her. She was not scared. She was too tired to be scared. She just wanted the pain to stop. She wanted to see her mother and father again. Maybe death would take her to them. She closed her eyes and listened to the distant sounds of the station. People laughing in the food court. Merchants shouting about their products. Ships arriving and departing. Life going on as if she did not exist. A tear rolled down her gray cheek. She thought about her mother's songs. She tried to remember the words, but they were fading from her memory. Everything was fading. Then she heard something different. Footsteps. Slow and shuffling. Coming closer. Kira did not open her eyes. Probably just someone throwing away garbage. Or maybe a security guard coming to chase her away again. It did not matter. Nothing mattered anymore. The footsteps stopped very close to her. For a long moment, there was silence. Then a voice spoke. It was a strange voice. Not like any alien she had heard before. It was soft and warm, like a blanket on a cold night. The language was unfamiliar, but the tone was clear. Whoever this was, they were not angry. They were not disgusted. They were concerned. Kira slowly opened her eyes. An old creature stood before her. He was short and bent. His skin was a light brown color, covered in wrinkles. White hair sat on top of his head like snow. He held a wooden stick in one hand to help him stand. His eyes were small and dark, but they were looking right at her. Not past her. Not through her. At her. For the first time in 3 months, someone actually saw her. The old creature slowly lowered himself to the ground. His body made sounds of complaint. His knees cracked. His breathing became heavy. But he did not stop until he was sitting on the dirty floor right in front of her. He was a human. Kira had heard of humans, but she had never seen one before. They were a young species, not very important in galactic politics. Nobody paid much attention to them, but this old human was paying attention to her. And that made all the difference. The next day, Taiho came back to the alley. He brought more food. Rice, soup, some fruit from Earth that his granddaughter had in her apartment. He also brought a blanket and a bottle of clean water. Kira was still there, in the same spot. She had nowhere else to go. When she saw the old human walking toward her with his cane and his slow steps, something strange happened inside her chest. A warm feeling. A feeling she had almost forgotten. Hope. Taiho sat down next to her again. His knees made loud cracking sounds, but he smiled through the pain. Good morning, he said. I brought breakfast. Kira still could not understand his words. The translation device in her ear had broken weeks ago, and she had no way to fix it. But she understood food. And she understood kindness. She ate slowly this time, just like he had taught her. This became their routine. Every morning, Taiho would come to the alley. Every morning, he would bring food and water. He would sit with Kira for an hour, sometimes 2. He would talk to her in his soft voice, telling her stories she could not understand. But the sound of his voice was comforting. It made her feel less alone. After a week, Taiho brought something new. A small electronic device. My granddaughter fixed this, he explained, even though he knew Kira could not understand. It is a translation chip. It will help you understand me and help me understand you. He showed her the tiny device. It was meant to go inside her ear, connecting to the broken translator that was already there. Yuna had worked on it for 3 nights, using spare parts from the medical lab. Kira looked at the chip with curious eyes. Taiho gestured to her ear, trying to explain. After some confusion and some gentle pantomiming, Kira understood. She let the old man carefully place the device in her ear. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the world changed. Can you understand me now? Taiho asked. Kira's eyes went wide. The words made sense. For the first time in months, someone was speaking to her, and she could understand every word. Yes, she whispered. Her voice was rough from not being used. I understand. Taiho smiled, and his old face lit up with joy. Wonderful, he said. Then let us talk. Tell me your name. Kira, she said. My name is Kira. That is a beautiful name. My name is Park Taiho, but you can call me grandfather if you like. That is what my granddaughter calls me. Kira did not know what to say. Nobody had asked her name in 3 months. Nobody had cared enough to ask Dot over the following days. They talked. Kira told Taiho about her home planet. She described the forests where the trees glowed at night. She talked about the rivers that sang when the wind blew. She told him about her parents, about their love and their laughter and their dreams for the future. Then she told him about the war, about the soldiers who came and destroyed everything, about the long journey as refugees, about the attack on the ship, about hiding in the cargo container while her parents died. Taiho listened to everything. He did not interrupt. He did not try to make her feel better with empty words. He just listened, and sometimes his old eyes filled with tears. When she finished, he took her small hand in his wrinkled one. "You have been very brave," he said, "and you have been very alone. But you are not alone anymore. I promise you that." It was a big promise. Kira was not sure he could keep it, but he did. The next day, Taiho brought his granddaughter Yuna to meet Kira. Yuna was a young woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile. She was a doctor who studied alien biology. She took one look at Kira and immediately went into medical mode. "She is severely malnourished," Yuna said to her grandfather. "And she has at least 2 infections that I can see. We need to get her proper treatment." Taiho nodded. "Then we will get her proper treatment." "Grandfather, it is not that simple. She has no documents, no legal status. The station medical center will not treat her without paperwork." Taiho looked at his granddaughter with stubborn eyes. "Then we will get her the paperwork." Yuna sighed. She knew that look. Her grandfather was not going to give up Dot, and so began the battle with bureaucracy. Taiho visited the station administration office every day. He filled out forms. He made requests. He waited in long lines. The officials told him it was impossible. A human could not sponsor an alien refugee. There was no process for this. There were no resources. Taiho did not care about impossible. He contacted the human embassy on the station. He wrote letters to officials on Earth. He called old friends and colleagues and asked for help. He used every connection he had built over 73 years of life. At the same time, Yuna brought medicine to Kira in secret. She treated the infections. She provided nutrition supplements. She broke several station regulations to do it, but she did not care. Her grandfather had taught her that rules were not more important than lives. Slowly, Kira began to heal. Her gray skin started to turn blue again. Her eyes began to glow with a soft light. She gained weight. She grew stronger. And for the first time since her parents died, she laughed. It happened one evening when Taiho was telling her a story about his childhood. He was describing how he once got his head stuck in a fence while trying to steal apples from a neighbor's tree. The way he told it, with big gestures and funny faces, made Kira giggle. Then the giggle became a laugh. A real, genuine laugh. Taiho stopped his story and stared at her with wonder. "That is the most beautiful sound I have heard in a long time," he said. Kira did not know how to respond. She had forgotten what it felt like to be happy. She had forgotten what it felt like to have people who cared about her. But sitting there with this strange old human and his kind granddaughter, she started to remember. Maybe, just maybe, things were going to be okay. Word began to spread about the old human and the alien girl. It started small. A security guard who had seen Taiho visiting the alley every day mentioned it to a friend. A nurse at the medical center heard about Yuna treating an undocumented refugee. A clerk at the administration office talked about the stubborn old man who would not take no for an answer. Stories like this traveled fast on the space station. At first, the other species laughed at the humans. The Tehran merchants made jokes about soft-hearted fools wasting their time. The Nexari traders calculated the cost of Taiho's efforts and concluded it made no economic sense. Even some humans on the station shook their heads and said that Taiho was being naive. But then something unexpected happened. A young Nexari student named Tika worked at a shop near the food court. She had seen the Valari girl begging many times. Like everyone else, she had looked away. It was not her problem. She had her own life to worry about. But after hearing the story of Taiho, Tika could not stop thinking about it. The old human had nothing to gain from helping the girl. He was not rich. He was not powerful. He was just an old man with a kind heart. Why had he helped when no one else did? The question bothered Tika. It made her uncomfortable. It made her look at herself and not like what she saw. One day, Tika went to the refugee processing center on the station. It was a crowded, sad place where aliens from destroyed worlds waited for help that rarely came. Tika found the supervisor and asked if they needed volunteers. The supervisor stared at her with all 5 eyes. A Nexari? Volunteering? Are you joking? No, Tika said. I want to help. She started coming to the center every day after her shift at the shop. She helped fill out forms. She translated for refugees who did not speak the common language. She brought food from her own small salary. Others noticed. A Tehran merchant named Vorn had been one of the people who laughed at Taiho. He had called the old man a fool. But Vorn had a secret. When he was young, his family had been refugees too. They had fled from a civil war on his home planet. He had survived only because a stranger gave his family shelter when no one else would. Vorn had buried that memory deep inside. It was easier to be hard and cruel than to remember how scared and helpless he had once felt. But Taiho's story brought all those feelings back. One night, Vorn went to the refugee center. He did not go inside. He was not ready for that. But he left something at the door. A large box filled with nutrient supplements. Enough to feed 50 refugees for a month. There was no name on the box. But the center supervisor found a note inside. For the children, it said, from someone who remembers. More and more stories like this began to happen. A Valari elder who had been too ashamed to help his own people made a public announcement. He apologized for his failure and established a fund to support Valari orphans. A group of human engineers started a program to repair translation devices for refugees who could not afford new ones. A popular restaurant near the main plaza began, donating leftover food to the refugee center instead of throwing it away. None of these people knew each other. They came from different species, different backgrounds, different worlds. But they all had one thing in common. They had heard about Taiho and Kira, and they had been inspired to do better. The Galactic News Network sent reporters to Harmony 7. They wanted to interview the old human who had started all of this. Taiho did not want to do the interview. He said he had not done anything special. But Yuna convinced him. Grandfather, she said, people need to hear your words. They need to understand why you did what you did. So Taiho agreed. The reporter was a tall alien with silver skin and 6 fingers on each hand. She set up her camera in Yuna's small apartment and asked Taiho to sit in a comfortable chair. Kira sat next to him, healthy and bright, her blue skin glowing softly. Mr. Park, the reporter said, why did you help this girl when no one else would? What do humans gain from acts like this? Taiho thought about the question for a long time. The camera was recording, but he did not care about the camera. He was thinking about his life, about his country, about the strangers who had helped when everything seemed hopeless. Gain? He finally said, we gain nothing. That is not why you help someone. He paused and looked at Kira. She smiled at him. On my world, Taiho continued, I grew up in a time of great suffering. My country had been destroyed by war. We had no food, no medicine, no hope. I was just a small boy, and I thought the world had forgotten us. His old eyes grew distant, seeing memories from long ago. But then strangers came. People from countries far away. Countries that had no reason to care about us. They sent ships full of food. They sent doctors and teachers. They helped us rebuild when they could have ignored us. He looked directly at the camera. Those strangers saved my life. They saved my country. And they did it because they believed that all people deserve kindness. All people deserve a chance. The reporter leaned forward. So you helped Kira because strangers once helped you? I helped Kira because she needed help, Taiho said simply. That is enough reason. On Earth, we have learned something through our long and difficult history. We have learned that no one survives alone. We have learned that the strong must protect the weak, not because they will get something in return, but because it is right. He smiled, and his wrinkled face became warm. That is what humans do. We remember what it was like to be helpless. And we refuse to let others feel that way alone. Not if we can help it. Never if we can help it. The interview was broadcast across 300 star systems. Billions of beings watched it. Politicians discussed it. Philosophers debated it. Children asked their parents about the old human and the alien girl. And somewhere, in dark corners of space stations and on broken worlds and in refugee camps throughout the galaxy, people who had given up hope watched the interview. They saw an old man with a kind smile. They saw a little girl who had been saved, and they thought, maybe, just maybe, things could get better. 1 year had passed since Taiho found Kira in that dark alley. The galaxy had changed. Not completely, of course. There was still suffering. There was still cruelty. There were still beings who looked away from those in need. But something had shifted. A seed had been planted, and it was growing. The Galactic Humanitarian Center was proof of that change. It was a new organization, created specifically because of Kira's story. 12 different species had come together to fund it. 12 species that had never agreed on anything before suddenly agreed on this one thing: that no child should starve alone in an alley while the universe looked away. The center had its grand opening on the first anniversary of the day Taiho and Kira met. It was built on Harmony 7, in the same district where Kira had nearly died. The building was beautiful, with tall windows that let in the light of the stars. Inside, there were medical facilities, housing for refugees, schools for children, and offices for the workers who would help people rebuild their lives. Thousands of beings came to the opening ceremony. Diplomats and journalists and ordinary citizens from hundreds of worlds filled the large atrium. Cameras floated in the air, broadcasting the event across the galaxy. On a stage at the front of the atrium stood 3 figures. Yuna was there, dressed in a formal uniform. She had been named the chief medical officer of the new center. It was a big job, but she was ready for it. Her grandfather had taught her that the size of the challenge did not matter. What mattered was the size of your heart. Taiho was there too, leaning on his cane. He looked older than he had a year ago. The journey had been hard on his body, but his eyes were bright and happy. He was proud of what they had accomplished. Not for himself, but for all the children who would be helped because of what they had started. And Kira was there. She was 10 years old now. Her blue skin glowed with health. Her eyes shone like 2 small moons, just as they were supposed to. She wore a simple white dress that Sunhee, Taiho's wife, had made for her and sent from Earth. In a few days, Kira would travel to Earth for the first time. She had been granted permanent residency. She would live with Taiho and Sunhee in their small house by the sea. She would go to school with human children. She would learn to grow vegetables in the garden. She would have a home again, a family again. But today, she had something important to do. When the time came, Kira walked to the podium at the center of the stage. She was nervous. She had never spoken in front of so many people before. But Taiho had told her something that morning. "Just speak from your heart," he had said. "That is all you need to do." Kira looked out at the crowd. Thousands of eyes looked back at her. Cameras recorded every moment. The whole galaxy was watching. She took a deep breath and began. "My name is Kira," she said. Her voice was soft at first, but it grew stronger with each word. "1 year ago, I was dying. I was alone in a dark alley, surrounded by garbage, waiting for death to come. Nobody saw me. Nobody cared. I was invisible." She paused and looked at Taiho. He nodded and smiled. Then an old man came. A human. He was slow, and his back was bent, and he needed a stick to walk. He was not strong or important or rich. But he saw me. He sat down on the dirty ground beside me. He gave me his lunch. He asked me my name. Kira's voice trembled, but she continued. He did not have to do that. He could have walked past me like everyone else. He could have told himself that I was not his problem. But he did not. He stopped. He helped. He stayed. Tears began to fall from her glowing eyes. Humans are not the strongest species in the galaxy. They are not the smartest or the fastest or the most powerful. They do not live very long. Their bodies are fragile. Their technology is simple. Many species think humans are unimportant. She shook her head. But those species are wrong. Because humans have something that many of us have forgotten. Something precious. Something that cannot be measured by strength or intelligence or wealth. She looked at the crowd, her eyes sweeping across faces from 100 different worlds. They remember that kindness costs nothing. They remember that every life has value. They remember that a single person can change everything. Kira turned to look at Taiho. The old man was crying quietly, tears running down his wrinkled cheeks. Grandfather Taiho saved my life. But he did more than that. He reminded the galaxy what it means to be good. He showed us that even when the universe is dark and cruel, there are still those who choose to be lights. She turned back to the crowd. I do not know what my future will be. I do not know if I will be important or do great things. But I know this. I will never forget what Grandfather Taiho taught me. I will never walk past someone who needs help. I will never let another child feel invisible. She raised her small hand and pointed at the audience. And I hope you will not either. For a moment. There was complete silence. Then someone started clapping. One person at first. Then 2. Then 10. Then 100. The applause grew and grew until it filled the entire atrium like thunder. Beings from every species stood and clapped and cheered. Some of them were crying. Kira stepped back from the podium. Taiho was there, and she ran into his arms. He held her tight, his old body trembling with emotion. I am so proud of you, he whispered. Your parents would be so proud. Kira buried her face in his chest and cried. But these were not tears of sadness. These were tears of joy. Tears of gratitude. Tears for a future that had seemed impossible 1 year ago. Around them, the crowd continued to cheer. Cameras broadcast the moment to 300 star systems. Billions of beings watched Dot and somewhere in the galaxy. In dark corners and on broken worlds and in refugee camps where hope was scarce, people watched too. They saw an old man and a little girl holding each other. They saw what kindness could accomplish. They saw proof that the universe did not have to be cruel. The story of Taiho and Kira was just beginning. It would inspire generations to come. It would change how species thought about each other. It would save countless lives in ways that could never be measured at all, because an old man from a small town in Korea saw a hungry child and chose to stop. That is the power of humanity. That is why. Across the stars, they tell stories about us. That is why. When the history of the galaxy is written, humans will be remembered not for their strength or their technology, but for something far more important. Their stubborn, beautiful, unbreakable kindness. His name was Park Taiho, and he was 73 years old. Back on Earth, in a small town by the ocean in Korea, Taiho had lived a simple life. He had been a botanist, a person who studies plants. For 40 years, he had worked in a small research center, growing vegetables that could survive in difficult conditions. It was not exciting work, but it was good work. It helped people. Now he was retired. His wife Sunhee still lived in their small house by the sea, taking care of their garden and their old cat. But Taiho had come to space for the first time in his life. His granddaughter Yuna worked on Harmony 7 as a xenobiologist, studying alien life forms. She had invited him to visit, and after much convincing, he had agreed. Space was strange to Taiho. Everything was too big, too loud, too fast. The aliens looked at him like he was a curiosity, a primitive creature from a primitive world. Humans were not respected in the galaxy. They were too new, too weak, too unimportant. But Taiho did not care about respect. He cared about other things. He had been walking back to his granddaughter's apartment when he took a wrong turn. The station was like a maze, and his old eyes had trouble reading the signs. He ended up in a back alley behind the food court, a place where visitors were not supposed to go. And there he found her. At first, he thought it was a pile of old cloth. But then the cloth moved, and he saw a small face. Blue-gray skin. Sunken cheeks. Eyes that had given up hope. Taiho had seen that look before. A long time ago, when he was just a boy. After the Great War, Korea had been destroyed. Buildings were rubble. Farms were burned. People had nothing to eat. Taiho remembered the hunger. He remembered the cold nights. He remembered the feeling of being invisible, of being forgotten by the world. But then help had come. Strangers from faraway countries had sent food and medicine. Teachers had come to rebuild schools. Slowly, things had gotten better. Korea had grown strong again. Taiho never forgot those strangers who helped when they did not have to. He never forgot the kindness of people who gained nothing from being kind. Now, looking at this small alien child, he saw himself. He saw every hungry child who had ever been ignored by the world. He could not walk away. Slowly, carefully, Taiho lowered himself to the ground. His old knees screamed in pain. His back complained loudly. But he did not stop until he was sitting face to face with the girl. She was looking at him with confusion in her tired eyes. She probably did not understand who he was or what he wanted. But she did not run away. Maybe she was too weak to run. Or maybe she sensed that he meant no harm. Taiho spoke softly in Korean. He knew she would not understand his words, but he hoped she would understand his tone. "Hello, little one," he said. "You look very hungry. When did you last eat?" The girl blinked. Her cracked lips moved, but no sound came out. Taiho reached into his bag. He had been planning to eat his lunch at the observation deck, watching the stars while enjoying his meal. His wife had taught him to always carry food, a habit from the old days when you never knew when you might need it. He pulled out a container of rice and kimchi stew. It was still warm. The smell filled the alley, covering the stench of garbage. The girl's eyes went wide. Her nostrils flared. Taiho saw her thin body tremble. He opened the container and held it out to her. The girl stared at it. Then she stared at him. She did not understand. Why would a stranger give her food? Nobody gave her food. Nobody gave her anything. "It is okay," Taiho said gently. "Please eat. You need it more than I do." Slowly, hesitantly, the girl reached out her thin hand. Her fingers were shaking. She touched the edge of the container as if expecting it to disappear. When it did not disappear, she grabbed it with both hands. She brought it to her face and started eating. She did not use her hands properly. She just pushed the food into her mouth as fast as she could. Rice fell on her ragged clothes. Stew ran down her chin. She ate like someone who thought the food might be taken away at any moment. Taiho watched with sad eyes. He had seen this before too. The desperate eating of someone who had been starving for too long. A shadow fell over them. Taiho looked up. A Tehran merchant stood there, all four arms crossed over his chest. His red face was twisted in disgust. "Human," the merchant said, his voice cold and harsh. "What are you doing? That creature is diseased. Belari refugees carry all kinds of sickness. You will contaminate yourself." Taiho looked at the merchant for a long moment. Then he looked back at the girl. She had stopped eating. She was staring at the Tehran with fear in her eyes. Her body had gone stiff. "She is a child," Taiho said simply. "And she is hungry." The merchant laughed. It was not a nice laugh. "You humans are so foolish, so emotional. This is why your species will never be important. You waste your resources on useless things." Taiho did not respond. He simply turned his attention back to the girl. "Please," he said to her softly, "continue eating. Do not worry about him." The merchant made a sound of disgust and walked away, muttering about stupid humans and dirty refugees. When he was gone, Taiho smiled at the girl. "There," he said. "He is gone. Eat slowly now. Your stomach is not used to food. If you eat too fast, you will get sick." The girl looked at him. There were tears in her eyes. Not tears of sadness. Tears of something else. Something she had not felt in a long time. She did not know this old human. She did not know his name or where he came from. But she knew one thing for certain. He was the first person in 3 months who had treated her like she mattered. She ate the rest of the food slowly, just as he told her. And when she was done, Taiho did not leave. He sat with her in that dirty alley, his old bones aching. And he stayed, because that is what you do when someone needs you. You stay.